Good evening, cult members, and welcome to the Pop Culture Cult. I'm Sean.
I'm Janice.
This is going to be our spoiler instantly after the episode reaction review discussion of Acolyte. This is episode 7 called Choice.
Yep.
This is the other flashback episode that we thought was coming.
Yep.
And I'm gonna address it this way with an asterisk that it's Star Wars and unreliable narrators are a thing. But I think this is what really happened on Bryndock. Not the previous episode where it was kind of from Osha's point of view.
Right. Well, I mean, she didn't know all. You know, she wasn't there for most of it.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, the only how would Soul have known what happened between May and her other mother, Coral?
Mother Coral, yeah.
So that's
This might be like the other one was from Osha's point of view, but this one's from May's point of view. But we got a bunch of stuff, or it's from Soul's point of view. That's why I was like, I'm going to put an asterisk on this about what really happened. Because the conversation is now the Jedi told the truth. They did feel like there was nobody there.
right.
And they stumbled across this coven of witches. And I love Torben going, night witches?
Yeah.
Wait, what? It's like, no, there's other covens out there apparently.
Yeah.
But I feel like this is the true story, but I think it's still up for interpretation upon one watch. And now if we go back and watch it again or watch it with the rest of the series, it might be a different kind of conversation.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know. This was episode 7 right? So there's just one more left. So yeah, I don't know. Did they name this planet before? Did we know that this planet was Bryndock?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe the only planet we don't know the name of from the series is the one with Chimere and Osha right now.
Right.
Yeah. That's the only one that we don't know and like we've talked about in the past, I love Star Wars, but I'm not the TK487 moisture evaporator on the third one on the left. You know, I'm not.
But I know you read the book or whatever, or had it read to you, where the light speed accident happened.
Yes.
And so obviously it happened kind of above this planet because they talk about it and there's all the parts and stuff. So I just didn't know if you knew of the planet.
I'm trying to remember. It's been a minute since I've read Light of the Jedi, which is the book that she's referencing. It's the first book that kicks off the High Republic, and that's the hyperspace disaster. The Nihil explode a cruise ship, a transport ship, a large one, in hyperspace, and it comes out of hyperspace at different spots, and the Jedi come together to stop major pieces of it, stopping. And I don't specifically remember Bryndock being mentioned.
Okay.
But if it's like they were saying that it was an uninhabited planet, they weren't going to spend time. The Jedi weren't going to spend time on trying to stop stuff.
Right. They would worry about the ones that were inhabited.
Right. But
it had to have been inhabited at some point in time because the witches were in this.
They called it a mine.
Okay, so they were in this mine.
Yeah.
So people were there at some point in time.
Yeah. From Light of the Jedi to this show is about 100 years.
Okay.
Or 150 years. No, because Venestra is there. So it's about 100. Well, she's 16. So it's about 100 years.
Okay.
So she's 16 when the hyperspace disaster happens.
Yep.
So it's possible that Brenda. Now, I don't know for sure. So please be very nice in the comments. But it's possible that this planet existed before everything happens in the High Republic.
Right. So the mine might be hundreds of years old.
Like from the Old Republic time period.
Yeah.
And they mined the planet to death.
Right. And then
which is a very Star Wars thing to do.
Yeah.
And then this left all this stuff there.
Yeah.
Now, why the Coven ran away from wherever they were and ended up here is a different conversation.
Right.
Like and they haven't really explained that yet. I think that's the next maybe talking point that we go forward with.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if they will.
And I'm okay if they don't. Because it's a bigger story of the Vergence and the Force that May and Osha were created to be by the Vergence in the Force.
Yeah.
By something in the Force, but it split itself into two different bodies.
Right.
Which is something that we talked about in the Destiny episode, which was the third episode when they did the flashback. And we talked about this is possibly one soul split into the dark side and the light side.
Yep.
And because the Force wants balance, it made a complete sense. And this, for me, was at least a confirmation of, without absolutely coming out and saying it. And maybe they still will come out and say it. But this is an app for me. It's yep. The Force created them to bring balance to whatever it is, whatever the Force feels like it's needed. Now, it might be to go against the Jedi. That's up for interpretation.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we'll see what happens in the final episode.
They got a lot to cover.
Yeah.
This was a shorter. It was 43 minutes with all the credits and everything. So
wow.
It was 37 minutes total, whatever, 35 minutes.
Yeah,
total.
and it was all just what happened on the planet from Saul's point of view or from the Jedi's point of view.
I do appreciate that they only gave us bits and pieces of the story that we already knew.
Yeah.
But it was from an outside perspective, like Soul hearing the twins do their little rhyme together.
Yeah.
Or the other end of the conversation of Osha and Mother Anastasia talking, but May and Mother
Coral
talk. It's like, so we got like a glimpse of it. Like, remember this part of the story? We're going to show you the other side of it.
Right.
Which, back to the, I'm not really sure whose point of view this is.
Right. But it ties you into where you are in the first viewing.
Yeah. So we don't. I feel we didn't need to spend that time to go around and sit there and say, here's 20 minutes of this part of the story you've already told, and then come back around to it.
No. But so Coral was kind of the instigator, not necessarily May. I mean, she kind of riled her up, and then nobody killed everybody. Not Vanestra. Andara.
Yeah.
Maybe because she pushed back and like pushed their magic back onto them.
Yeah. I'd like to. I don't feel like that's going to be properly explained, but having her trying to break Kilnaka out of the mind meld that was going on, and I like how they set that up with Torben earlier.
Yeah.
But Kilnaka, like, I didn't know I needed to see a Jedi Wookiee fighting two other Jedi. I didn't know I needed to see that. But her being so powerful, Indara, to be so powerful, to take down a Wookiee Jedi.
Yeah.
With essentially leg kick and a mind meld.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's Trinity, of course she can, but she was able to push back against the rest of the Coven that had taken over Kelnaka's brain, and so when she is so strong, I can accept the reality that she is so strong that she was able to push back against the Coven, that in that pushing back, she killed them.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know necessarily if it was death or if they just like were made unconscious and then the fire took them.
Right. Or they're not dead at all.
The only one that's dead is Mother Anastasia, and that's because Saul, out of fear, out of worry for the girls, when Mother Anastasia starts to become the smoke monster, for lack of a better term,
right?
He pulls out his lightsaber and stabs the smoke before she's fully materialized into smoke.
Yeah.
And that brings her back to her physical form. And then that's when she said, I was going to let them go. I was going to let Osha go with you.
That was what she...
And that is the cascading, like, final moment to kind of lead into the fight and everything else.
Yeah.
And then Mother Kroll attacks Soul because her wife just got killed by him, and he is instantly in remorse and instantly backing, trying to get out of the fight, and she's kicking his tail.
Yeah, he's just blocking. He's not.
And she starts getting mad because he won't fight back.
Yeah.
And so, like, a lot of the conversation has been around, how everything happened. And this is just a series of unfortunate events.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like, what was going on with Saul? I mean, he was pushing against everybody. Yeah. I have to go get these girls. I have to. Something's happening. He had no, you don't know that. So I'm interested to see, so there has to be something that kind of comes back around and redeems him a little bit, because, just based on this episode, he messed up all over the place. He was impulsive. He was,
emotional.
Emotional. Yeah. He was, not listening to so was,
Andarna.
I keep wanting to say Venestra, and that's not her. Was Andarna his master?
I don't believe so.
Okay,
I think she was just the leader of that expedition.
One point in time.
Yeah,
but he's just not listening, and so there has to be some reason why he was so drawn to Osha. I mean, he even let May drop. By the way, kids, get off the bridge. He is struggling to try to save you, and all you're doing is standing there calling each other's name. Get off the bridge. But he ultimately sacrifices May to save Osha, so there has to be some payoff for that.
And I think that's the crux of the conversation that we're having, is that in the moment, in the first introduction, all the way through, he felt an instant connection with Osha. Now, that could be the Force coming in and saying, hey, these witches are crazy. We need to save one of them. And the Force works that way. But over and over again in this series, they have shown that Soul is much more connected to his emotional side, compared to everybody else. And I think that's one of the things that people may struggle with, because they think that the Jedi that we know in the original trilogy, in the prequels, are told you cannot have emotion, or they continuously are presented with this idea that you cannot have emotion.
Yeah, well, they're teaching it to them in this one. That was in the very first episode.
Yep. And so it's not in this time period, before we get to the prequels, there's a much more open conversation about Jedi have emotion. Like, they can have emotion. and they can recognize that they have emotion, and they can tap into that emotion. What they can't do is be controlled by their emotion.
Which he was.
Right. Which is why I think he's carried this guilt with him the entire way.
Well, yeah. I mean, but it didn't stop him. He's still showing emotion. He was, like, again, he was doing it in the first episode. So I don't know. I will wait for explanation in the next episode, but I kind of feel like I don't even know how he would have become a Jedi if he was this way.
Yeah.
So there has to be some reason.
I believe they said that he was taken when he was 4, which is older for a prospective Padawan,
for a kidnapping.
For a kidnapping, we are in the kidnapping part of Jedi kidnap kids. That's what we believe. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but they kidnap kids. But for Soul to be not the final straw, but the catalyst. I guess he is the catalyst to everything, because he is so wanting to. He's so worried about the safety of the girls after doing a couple of sneaking around the mine.
That's what I'm saying. Like, instantly he's like, they're in trouble.
Yeah.
From what? How did you? What drew you to that conclusion?
Yeah.
Now they go in there after, because he's, worked up into a frenzy, that they all walk in, on the ceremony, and so then they whatever mine hex Torben. So they, then they kind of have some more grounds to be a little worried about what's going on, but it's just I have questions.
And that's fair, and I think we'll get some kind of answers next week, because we got nothing from May hearing this story from Saul. They showed the ship, but we got no interaction between the two of them.
Right.
And we still have no interaction. We had no interaction between Chimere and Osha.
Yeah.
And her putting the helmet on.
Yeah.
So I feel like
there's a lot of loose
threads, and they even addressed that Soul wanted to go back to Coruscant and face the High Council for his actions of trying to save these girls, and what it ended up causing, the attack on the Mother Talzin and the death of all the witches, or supposed death of all the witches and whatever. But Indarna is the one who fabricated the lie in the moment to kind of throw it back on Soul. Like, why would you take this away from Osha? This is what she wanted. And why would you take that away from her now? You have this connection with her.
Right, right. And that's kind of another, like, he was so willing to throw it all away after you did all of this to get her. And then,
one of the conversations that's been had about Anakin in the prequels is that he lived his life with his heart on his sleeve, and that the Jedi Council punished him for that.
Yeah.
I wonder if this is the reason for that. Is that Soul finally goes to the High Council, tells them the whole story of what happened, and that he did make all these emotional decisions, and then because of this conversation,
the council or the Jedi become much stricter on
much stricter about that
emotions.
Yeah,
maybe
that's a very I would be way okay if that's the story. Now, we've been talking about Chimera maybe possibly being the first Knight of Ren, which I still think that's the theory. But to have this idea of the rigidity of the Jedi as we get to the prequel series that isn't there now, it would be a very interesting kind of signpost for what's going to be coming down the line for the Jedi.
So, have they? Is this just 8 episodes hard stop? We're not ever doing any more.
So, I don't know.
Okay.
From Leslie Headland has a second season outlined, ready to go, that they just need to sit in the writers' room and hash out.
Right.
And she has an idea for a third season. So there might have been like, let's see how this goes.
Yeah. No, I'm just wondering because it feels like now I don't know if they said how long the next episode is going to be, but it just feels like there's a lot to get wrapped up or answered in the last episode. So I was just wondering if they had planned on it being more than one season, but if they're kind of waiting to see how it goes, then I would think that they're going to wrap it up for the most part.
I am only projecting. I am just going to announce that right now. I am only projecting. I think Lucasfilm and Disney Plus will want a second season of the show. Ahsoka did really well.
Yeah.
Ahsoka did really, really well. It's a beloved character. Some people, it didn't connect with them as much as others as it did for me specifically. But they're going to get a second season. Part of that is because it's Dave Filoni.
Right, and he created Ahsoka, so of course.
This show, The Acolyte, got better viewing numbers than Ahsoka did.
Okay.
So if we're going to take that as a metric, we still don't understand how their metrics are working on streaming services. But if we're talking about views that Disney Plus can see, that Bob Iger can see, let's just be honest, what Bob Iger can see,
and the board,
and public engagement, then this is getting a second season. Now, the public engagement has been very rough with this show, unjustly. There has been some viable conversation about pacing and some of the writing choices, which is what we're talking about with Soul and stuff like that, and a lot over the top review bombing. And so if they take the public engagement and the viewing numbers, we're getting a season 2.
Yeah.
And so I'm just, like I said, I'm projecting, I'm hoping we get that. The Virgins in the Force. Now, I need to go do a little bit more digging into that a little bit. But we have the dyad. We have Rey and Ben, two sides of the same coin, created, connected through the Force. They're not created by the Force; they're connected by the Force.
And Palpy.
And Palpy helps a little bit with that too. But they are connected through the Force directly with each other. Some say Luke and Leia are also a dyad in the Force, but they're twins, so it's a little bit whatever. Idea. But if Virgins in the Force. Anakin's a virgin in the Force.
Yeah.
And we talked about this too when that episode, that the Force created Anakin to bring balance to the Force.
Right.
In the comments.
Comment in the comments.
Comments in the comments. So if this Leslie Headland is a prequel kid, she loved the EU, the original storytelling that happened in the EU. If this is her take on that story, I find it interesting that they allowed that Lucasfilm allowed that story to happen. Because the sanctity of Anakin holds a lot of what Star Wars is together. And his rise and fall and re-rise is the whole essence of the main part of Star Wars. And so if Leslie had this idea of what if the Force tried to do this balance before and it went sideways because of outside interference, then maybe
the Force learned its lesson and decided not to do it in twins and do it in one.
Yeah.
That was good and then went bad.
Yeah, because ultimately...
And then went good in the very end.
Well, because he had brought balance to the Force. Because
sure.
at the time we get to the prequels, it's only the light side. Right. And there is no dark side.
Right. No, I know. But just...
Yeah.
Learned its lesson from having two individuals and just made it one person.
Yeah. So having that conversation, I think for me, that's what I'm going to kind of lean into for the next week of everybody's Discord online about how good or bad this episode was. But for me, that's where I'm going to be concentrating. You're going to be concentrating on Soul. I'm going to get you concentrating on the variants. I love that idea that the Force created them and then they ended up splitting. Because we've been talking about it the whole time. I just want to be right about Star Wars, about a theory that I had in Star Wars. One time. Lady Anastasia getting into Torben's head and just calling him by name, where he's from, like his deepest, darkest desires, him wanting to go home. I love how they all set that up earlier, that we've been here for 7 weeks, we haven't found anything but grass. Why are we still here?
Yeah.
It's like this is dumb, that impatient Padawan thing. I love it whenever Padawans are impatient and the master comes in and says, okay, listen, I know this feels like it, but you have to do this. But he was also strong enough to fortify his mind.
Yeah.
So when he went with Saul to help the girls, he was able to be strong. So he was a good Jedi. And Darna was presented as the leader. We're doing this, but still had time to kind of joke around with Saul and be a little bit lighthearted and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then she became the rigid one, as we were introduced to her in the first episode. And then Kelnaka, as presented in in episode 5, when we go to his little hut thing, had all the swirls of the Coven and stuff like that, because all of the Coven was in his head.
Yeah.
And so that residual effect was still there. So all of that stuff kind of got explained about the scar on Torben's face and just all these different aspects that people had been questioning, not in a bad way, just questioning why did this happen? Why are we seeing this?
Yep.
What is it we're doing this?
Yep.
And so I was here for all of that. I think that's it. Oh, Anastasia telling Coral, we chose not to choose. We talked about not using violence. Making a point of saying we've been, to me, that means we've been violent before. It's down a bad path. And then that kind of leads to everything that goes on in the fight, with the archers. And,
Yep.
Yeah. So, very interesting episode. I think I need to watch it again to kind of get how I fully feel about it. But, I'm going to hold out how I feel about this episode when I go and watch the next episode, because I'm like you. I don't know how I feel about this episode right now.
Yeah, I just feel like it's left some open questions, feelings, whatever.
Yeah.
So we will see how they're answered next week.
Yep, absolutely. So let us know what you thought of this episode and our discussion about it in the comments down below if you're on the YouTube channel. If you're on the podcast feed, just hit follow. It helps us out. Listen to our episodes. We're doing House of the Dragon 2. And we got some other shows that are coming down the line. We'll probably do a Boys rundown once we get all of done with Boys. This last episode of Boys.
I don't know how we're going to talk about that.
I don't know how we're going to talk about that show. Like this video from the YouTube channel. hit subscribe and the bell for notifications. It's free. It helps us out, all that kind of stuff. And follow us on all those social media stuff, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Links in the description down below in both the Spotify and YouTube channels. And until next time, cult members, for light and life.